Guys, don't worry about it.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of news this morning, as we do every weekend, and we are all over it. We see a turn now in this Robert Mueller investigation. It really started with T.S. Ellis, that federal judge, who said a couple days ago, look, you've got unfettered power. This is getting out of control. Time out here. I want to see that scope memo to see where all this is going and why Paul Manafort is facing charges from 2005
on bank fraud and tax fraud. And he's saying, what does that have to do with Russian collusion? So now another judge is causing some real questions in this whole investigation.
That's right. Her name is Dabney Frederick. She's a D.C. district. There she is right there. District Court judge, nominated by President Trump, I'll note. She's overseeing the case that's being made against, remember those 13 Russian bots or Russian individuals and the 3 companies that oversaw that, meddling action? Well, they were all brought to court. And if you think about it, I bet Bob Mueller's team never thought that anyone would challenge it, because these guys are in Russia. They're not subject to our laws necessarily.
Well, one of the companies did.
Yeah, that's right. They hired 2 attorneys, and they showed up, and they said, we're challenging this process. We want to see what you're doing. And, and this entire investigation. So Bob Mueller said, wait, we want a little extra time. We need some time to figure this out. And the judge says, no, you don't get special time. In fact, I want to see more.
That has been the biggest question throughout this whole process, is ultimately what was the evidence that led to this investigation? And is there enough evidence to, because there have now been so many legs as part of this investigation. As we've been saying, you cast out such a wide net that you can catch anybody for anything. So now Paul Manafort, there are a lot of questions of, look, I'm not defending anything that he did back in those days, but what connection does that have with this Russian investigation? And what role does Ron Rosenstein now play? Because the memos that this judge is referring to are the memos that came from Rod Rosenstein, right? That created sort of a barrier.
About the Mueller probe, because he oversees it. And a sharp mind on all of this is Andy McCarthy from National Review. He was on last night with Brian Kilmeade, filling in for Jesse Waters. Here's what he said.
Finally, someone is able, who has the authority and status to push back at the special counsel investigation. What has been the flaw of this investigation from the beginning, which is that it's an unguided missile. What happened here was they assigned a prosecutor and they gave him basically limitless authority to go find a crime. For the first time, we've had someone who the special counsel has to take notice of, the judge presiding over a case, who's saying, what on earth does this have to do with collusion with Russia? And he was not very satisfied, obviously, with the answers he got from the special counsel.
Alan Dershowitz has been such a strong voice throughout this entire process. And what he said just a few days ago was everyone should be concerned about the way this is being handled, because anyone could be in trouble from something like this. Anyone could be charged for something like this. How far can this investigation go? How far can it stretch? It seems like it's beginning to lose some steam.
Yeah, it's shifting. It's now about what the president's been talking about, which is investigating the investigators and saying, hang on, what else happened? Friday night, 2 top FBI officials, including Lisa Page, James Baker, the former general counsel, they abruptly resigned. Why? They're about to face the music, folks. The Inspector General report from the Justice Department, long awaited, is finally about to come out. And by the way, Devin Nunes coming on later this hour. Just gotten a tease. He's going to break some news later this hour. You're going to want to stand by for that, because I think it's about this entire investigation.
It all gives you some hope that there might be some checks and balances in this country. You don't want judges deciding elections, but sometimes you need them to step in and make determinations whether it's staying within the bounds. Ed, you hit the key on this. The scope memo is the new memo to talk about. What did Rod Rosenstein really allow Bob Mueller to do? Will he follow it? Because that should and ought constrain it. And we're hearing a lot more pressure on Rod Rosenstein as a result. A guy who is conflicted himself as the one who suggested that Jim Comey be fired, and now is overseeing that entire circular logic.
And into the maelstrom this week is Rudy Giuliani, coming in as the lead attorney.
He's been making the rounds and causing a few more questions earlier this week. But he was on with Judge Jeanine last night, and he talked even about Jeff Sessions and how he needs to step in and shut this whole thing down. But at one point he talked about the government and how the government is the one that is committing the crime in all of this.
This investigation went from Russia collusion to obstruction. Gone. Now, who's chasing, porn stars and stuff? I mean, why are we even going in this direction? And why are we not ending this? Because there is no evidence that's been unearthed.
You're not missing anything. We're not missing anything. We turned over the documents, after all. There's no evidence of any of the things you're talking about. The only evidence there is, the only crimes committed here have been committed by the government, which is why the Judge Ellis, is so outraged. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't dismiss this case.
Interesting, because ultimately all of these charges have to come before judges and decide whether they fit the scope and whether there's an actual crime. To your Dershowitz point, there has to be a crime. If collusion isn't a crime, what crime are they getting these people on? And that's why a lot of people say, Mr. President, don't talk to Bob Mueller because you're walking into a perjury trap. Even if you haven't lied or aren't lying, they're just trying to get you to say something that they can get you on.
But that's where it gets complicated because then he could be subpoenaed. And then they're going to have to challenge
Then they
that.
can fight that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that people
powers.
in the Trump camp have been saying privately that if this goes all the way to the Supreme Court, guess what? They may have the votes. It may be 5-4 in the president's favor because of the more conservative justices on the court now, the tilt on the court. On the other hand, some of those conservative justices may say, all the facts should come out. We're not going to side with the president on this. But there may be some in the Trump camp willing to bet that they'll let that subpoena go all the way to the Supreme Court. So this showdown is just starting.
Devin Nunes, I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
I just got a little tease of it, and I can tell you, I think it's going to be a hot story coming up at 8:30 Eastern Time.
That is a tease. Well, believe it or not, there are some other stories going